Hey friends, welcome to the two-headed dragon tutorial part 2, and today we are going to be starting on shaping. And so we have our unfinished model, which we left off on part 1, and then here's the completed one. So it's going to kind of look something like this when we're all done. Now, for shaping, we basically did a lot of the folding, but we didn't do any of the, dry shaping. So there's still a couple more things to fold out before we touch the MC, where the MC is going to allow us to get like these little curves for the wings and to just lock everything nicely in place and, you know, make it look nice. So that is going to be the start of this tutorial. We're going to get all the dry shaping done, and then we're going to move on into the wet shaping. So let's get started, and I hope you're ready. And let's get started. Now, small disclaimer, you can see I injured my fingers. I actually injured my whole hand, but these two fingers are a little bit in worse shape. So it's going to take me a little bit longer to do some things just because I have to be careful. So I hope you'll bear with me, but yeah. All right, so right now this is kind of a jumbled mess. We have our two heads. We have our back spines, our tail, our back legs, our front legs, and the wings. Now, what we want to do is just make sure you don't lose track of what anything is. So, make sure the wings are up here, legs are down here. And I had some questions about what this flap is for. Now, this flap, it's either going to become like an extra spike. It kind of just depends. Or it kind of just helps close off some of the body, but it doesn't really have a purpose. We might use it a little bit later. But let's get started on the legs, because there's a couple things we have to do. And I'm going to start, and this is the left leg. So I'm going to start with the left leg, just like that. And first thing I want to do is, we can see the corner of the paper is up here. I'm taking a look at this toe, and that's where the Elias stretch is that connects to the neck. And I'm just going to do a spread squash right along here. And some people like to pre-crease this. I prefer not to. I kind of just rely on, holding it with my fingers to widen the base and then slowly pressing the squash fold, because we're squashing it. And from there, it gives me some control as to like where it gets lined up from. And I just make sure it's in the middle and it's to the edge, but feel free to do whatever method you like. And this is going to be a common thing in all of the legs. Next, I'm going to grab the point that's tucked underneath our squash fold, and we're going to pull it out. And after we pull it out, we're going to recollapse on the creases. If you look closely on yours, you're going to see the creases that were made that allowed it to be tucked in, but this is going to be reversed, so it's going to be a mountain, but it kind of does it automatically if you're very careful with it. And then from here, just popping it open like that. Now, when we're shaping the legs, obviously, if we just let it go, it looks like it's going to close back up like this. We don't want it to close back up like that, however. We're going to be using the space above this diamond we created from the squash fold and kind of do a sort of outside reverse fold. So let me show that to you really quick. It's going to kind of look like this. And I'm messing it up, but just like that. And there is not really a specific reference, but you want to get it as high up as possible. And I guess, if it's accurate, it might lie along this grid point, but it doesn't really have to if your paper is either smaller or too thick or something like that. Now, one thing that happened is we kind of locked our toe in the back here like this. So we're not going to worry about that too much. We can kind of tuck it in like this, but I think later on we're going to have to move it anyways. But just for now, We're going to leave it like that and come back to shaping it later. Now, let's do that on the other side really quickly, just so you can get a hang of it. For some of these things, I'm going to tell you just to repeat on the other side, but in this case, we can do it like this. So I'll go a little bit faster. We're going to start off with the spread squash, just like this. And when you're working on yours, you don't have to go as fast as I'm going. You know, feel free to pause. I'm kind of narrating the steps so you can hear it at least. And then complete it on your end. Resume, and then at least you have an idea of what's happening. Pull out the flap. Like that. We're going to make the tip go backwards like that. So we have our diamond. And we're going to outside reverse fold. And this time I'm going to kind of start by looking at the grid. Actually, I don't really like to do that because it doesn't exactly work because it starts opening everything else. But essentially you're going to do a little outside reverse fold. Like that. There's our grid. Just like that. Cool. Now let's flip back over to the other side and we're going to take a look at the back leg. Now the back leg, it's both similar and different. So if we take a look at what we're working with, we have, you know, kind of an interesting array of flaps going on. And then we also have like this edge and then this one where it looks more like what we were doing before, where we'd actually be able to do that squash fold. Now there's two of those. There's one in the front and one in the back. We're going to be dealing with the one in the front. So in this case, the one in the front is the one that's closest to the wing. And once again, we're going to squash fold this. Like that. Just like the front leg. And in the same way, I'm going to pull this out. Just like that. And now on this, we still have a longer flap. So I'm actually going to do another squash fold right here. Don't forget to try to get it precise. This one, it's not going to matter too much because of the next step. But at least get, you know, the base of it relatively clean. What you can. And then same thing, we're going to take that pocket and pull it open. Get those creases lined up. Fold it back like that. And now here is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. So what I'm going to do is this second diamond right here, I'm going to hold it. And at the same time, I'm going to be holding the foot right here. And what I'm going to do is pull. And you can see it's going to open up this section and kind of create a new crease from that corner of the tip to that little bit right there. And that is what we want. And we want to kind of concrete that line, that new crease. And the result of that is it's going to form a new crease inside as well. But when we do both sides together, it's going to allow it to lay back flat again. And you'll notice that this tip became slightly longer than it was before. So if I fold it forward, you can see that it's slightly longer. And we kind of have a smooth angle right there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be swiveling it as well to put it in place. But the way we swivel it is I want you to look inside right here and imagine creases. Like, I guess this is almost like a reverse fold, but not quite. But imagine two valley lines right there and right there. So I'm going to start to crease it for you to see. So one that's right there. And the other one that is like that. And what that's going to allow us to do is when we fold those together, and let's get the wing out of the way. When you fold these together, it's going to allow us to do something like this, where now our leg is facing perpendicular to the rest of the tail. And I know, again, there's a lot of mess, so it's kind of hard to see, but maybe I can hold it like this. You can kind of tell that it rotated the leg 90 degrees down. And so now if we hold our model, both of our legs are actually facing down. And you're going to go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. And I'm not going to show that. Just go ahead and do that really quick, and then we're going to continue. All right, so we have completed the leg on the other side here. And you might notice I just folded the wings up because I thought it'd be easier to show you with these out of the way. So these are just both wing flaps and I clipped them together. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it might help you. But we can generally see our legs now a little bit easier on both sides, as well as this flap that's just kind of hanging out there. And we'll figure out what we want to use this for later. Now, there are more things we need to do with the claws. And so we're going to start on this side and let's work on the front leg first. And what we'll be doing is thinning out these claws. So the front leg is pretty straightforward. We're going to be doing a sequence of reverse folds. And I like to pre-crease just the first reverse fold, which is going to be an angle bisector. And so it's something like this. Just using the edge as our reference. And then normally what I do is I actually just use the first pre-crease as reference for the others. And you can kind of get them all in one go like that. And this might not be the most precise way to do it, but I kind of just fix any inaccuracies during the actual reverse fold. Now there's this paper flap from our outside reverse fold that might be in the way. And so just make sure that's, pushed out a little bit so that we can actually do our reverse folds. And you can see when I open up the paper, we made our pre-creases right along that line and we can start. And so what I like to do is just use, whatever reference for the first reverse fold. Just like that. And then just keep going on the rest of them. And we only have 3 total, so it's not that many. And one more here. And after we do this first sequence of reverse folds, there are 2 more. And the other 2, I kind of just do both on each claw individually because it's kind of easy like that. So, right, we have now our claws like this. And if you have your own preferred way of doing it, you go ahead and do your way. Now this is already on our pre-existing crease, but you can see we have a little bit sticking up there. That we don't have pre-creased, but it's pretty easy just to use the existing edges as reference. And the most important part is that it just comes to a point at the end. And that will give you your sharp claw, regardless of, how perfect or precise you were. But, you can try to be as precise as you like. But honestly, I think pre-creasing this makes it less precise since you'll have to fold over a lot more layers. All right, we got one more on the front claws right here. Just like that. Let's get this one a little bit sharp. There you go. got stuck. And then our last reverse fold, just like this. All right, so that's our front leg done. And we have this, remaining flap. Just let it be how it be. Worry about it later. And now we're going to worry about the second leg. Now, the second leg is a bit more challenging than the front leg, or sorry, the back legs are. And we have two main issues. One is they're going to be sync folds. It's only 3. But the other issue is because of how the toes are arranged, sometimes they get stuck while you're doing it. So to start, your toes might be folded down, these outward toes. Make sure they are folded upwards. So that's the first thing to check. And as you're doing your sinks or pre-creases, just make sure they're folded up. Now we can start with pre-creasing. I'm going to pre-crease facing this way, where the edges are faced up. And it's just an angle bisector still. So the pre-creasing is the same. Now, the next one we need to pre-crease is actually on this side of the toes. And so just grab the flap like that, pre-crease. Just like that. And let's unfold these two. And have a look at the next flap here. Now, if you pre-crease that, it's okay. This one is actually our easy one. So the second flap right here, because this is just a squash fold, and it's exactly like what we did earlier, and except we just have to do the first one. So just do a squash fold like that. And the sole purpose of this is just to thin the toe out. So that's all we need to do there. And then the last pre-crease we need to make is on the one next door, right here. Pre-crease that. And we're good to go. So I'm going to flip it back to the top side of the foot, and we've pre-creased them all already. And let's start with a sync fold on this one. It doesn't really matter which one you start with, but one of them on the edge. And to open sync it, the paper might be a little bit locked. So let me show that example. It's already kind of given me some trouble grabbing it. All right, just like that. But once you have it, it's, just a regular open sync. Not all the paper can open up though. So when you're trying to get your finger underneath to help you reverse the creases, it might be a little bit challenging, but just take your time, And to do these sync folds, it's an open sync. So all I really have to do is reverse the creases that are valley and then fold along all of them like a mountain. And in that case, it is this edge one and then the small one up here, which is the harder to do, but I just got it like that. And once those are done, we can complete our open sync just like that. Now, when I'm reversing the creases, it's kind of less of reversing the creases and more like pre-creasing. So I'm kind of just knowing where the creases go and adding it myself. The middle one is probably the harder of the sync folds just because everything under here is kind of in the way. So when you stick your finger underneath, you might be unfolding it a little bit and you want to be careful so that you don't tear the paper. But again, just get it enough. And if you can just use the tension of the paper to reverse the creases instead of actually leaving your finger there, that would be beneficial. But sometimes you just gotta get your finger in the pocket to help yourself invert the crease like I'm having to do here. And once that's done, we can complete our open sync. Now, don't worry if I'm going faster than you. Make sure you take your time on these. You don't want them to be super mushed. They don't have to be perfect, but you want them to be pointy. So as long as the edges are kind of pointed, you're good to go. We have one more, and that's right here. And this one's on the edge. should be nicer to do. And we're going to invert that crease. Just like this. Complete our sink fold. And now our claws are all thinned out. So we can see we have 4 claws here. 1, 2, and 2 right here. 3, 4. And I'm just going ahead and fixing a little bit if they got kind of mushed in the middle. But there you go. There's our 4 claws. All right. We can fold it back to this orientation. And now is the obligatory part where I tell you to repeat these steps on the other legs. So same thing for the other legs that we showed on the front leg and the back leg. Go ahead and do them on the other side. I've actually already done them on the other side, but go ahead and pause them and then come back when you have completed both sides. All right, so the next thing to do after we have thinned out our claws is to thin out our tail. Now, the tail is kind of a big jumbled mess, and it's going to be like that until we start wet shaping. But if you can navigate on the inside, we have 3 points. We've got 1, we got 2, and we got 1 in the middle right there. And the hardest thing about this is keeping track where the centers are. So the bottom, it's easy to tell what the center is because it's kind of just sitting there. But the middle center will be the one that, you know, folds right on top there. That shows where the other ones are like this. And you just want to find that and kind of flatten it out, open it up a little bit so that we can do some work like that. Now, first thing we're going to do is some pre-creases, and it's going to result in an open sink, but it's not the same open sink that we just did. And that is because of the presence of this thing right here. Makes it a little bit trickier, but not too much. So what we're going to do is when we do our pre-creases, we're going to do the angle bisector, but I'm going to be folding through this layer and this layer at the same time. We actually can't do them one at a time because they get stuck right there. Now, if you realize the sink fold I'm going to show is too difficult for you, you can just pre-crease them one at a time and leave it up to that point. Treat them like regular open sinks, but it won't be as sharp. So, but that's an option if you absolutely cannot figure out what I'm doing for the more complex sink. But for a more complex sink, you're going to crease them all together. I'm going to do the other side as well. Might as well, right, while we're here. Don't forget it's 2 layers. And let's start our sink. So, and you notice we're going to have to do it on this side too, but we'll show that later. So to do this sink, I'm going to open up the layers a little bit, and it's really hard to open up all the layers because it's like very trapped all the way up here. And the only way to reach inside is up through this, which you're going to realize it's kind of locked down from all the other leg stuff we did. So that's not really an option. And that makes this a little bit more difficult. We're going to have to rely on fidgeting with the paper to reverse the creases. And so you can already see which creases we need to reverse. It's going to be that one, and then we're actually going to be pulling this part out a little bit. Now, in this case, to reverse the creases, I like to start by folding down on the creases that have already exist. So in this case, this one's already mountain, so I'm going to use that mountain and hold it there in order to stretch the paper to pop it out, in which case now I can reverse that crease. And it's not fully there yet, so I gotta fidget with it a little bit more until I can make that crease. And we're not going to complete the sink yet because we need to do the other side too. So I'm going to do the same thing. This one is the existing mountain. And the one I need to reverse is right here. So I'm popping it out so that I can reverse that crease. And then here's the tricky part. So with our sink fold, you can see how this point is now popping towards us, and we want that to happen. And what we can do is actually grab right here now that these are collapsed, but it's going to create some more creases. So it's going to create mountain folds along there and then a valley fold connecting them. And if you kind of just press down, it starts to naturally form, but you won't be able to fold it all the way down unless you complete the rest of the sink and close it back up like that. But and I guess in that form, it's more of a squash fold than a sink fold. We kind of did the hard parts of the sink fold by just reversing the creases. But that is the sequence. It's kind of strange. I'm going to show it again on the other side so you can see another example. I'm going to go a little bit faster, but just for some anatomy of where these creases are, that point right there is the one that's currently inside. So again, we open up our pre-creasing. We're going to use the creases that exist in order to invert the creases that we need to invert. And I'm rotating it for myself just so it's easier for me to see. All right, the first one is this one. Use that to stretch out the paper here in order to reverse that crease. I'm going to do the same thing on this side now. Use the one that's pre-creased the correct direction in order to invert the crease of the one on the other side. Just like that. And we popped it out a little bit too much actually, so we lost that center line. So we're refolding a little bit. And there it goes. Now it popped back out. And then we have these new creases that we have to make. And allow that to fold down like that. I don't know if I was off. Hopefully I wasn't off screen for that, but you saw it before. And you can see it's not perfect, but again, it's close enough. The edges, again, all I really worry about when thinking about precision for these kinds of models is if the points are sharp. So as long as everything folds to the point, it's okay. If the edges are a little wonky or if the parts over here are a little wonky, that's okay. What's going to show is the edges, so or the corners. Just make sure those corners are sharp. All right, and of course, we're going to be doing that same thing on the other side. So we've got one here, one here. Go ahead and do those. I'm just going to show, don't forget to pre-crease first. You're pre-creasing 2 layers together. And the actual process of doing these sink folds / squash folds, it's kind of mixed. I'm going to not show that. We're going to come back when I'm done with this. So go ahead, work on yours. And once you're done, let's continue the tutorial. And we have completed on both sides those sink squash kind of things. And you can see my clip fell off from the wings. We'll leave it here in case we use it later. But let's get into the rest of the thinning. We have just a little bit more to do. And these ones are easier. It's just the same kind of squash that we did for the legs. So, and we need to do 4 of them total. So it shouldn't be too long. And we only have to do the first row. We don't have to do the follow-up ones. If you want to, you can, if you think it's fun, but you don't have to. It doesn't really change much. Maybe a little bit of layer thickness, but not too much. It's only layer thickness on the edge a little bit. All right, so that's 2. This one got stuck a little bit. Sometimes it do be like that, but no matter. You can just squeeze out the paper a little bit. There we go. So that was 2, and I think we have 2 more on the other side. So you can see how that cleans it up. And let's get this one done. Just like this. And we got 1 more. So yeah, after, finishing this fold, you're going to be pretty good at doing these kinds of sinks, or not sinks, these kind of squash folds for sure. But now we have our 3 points all thinned out. And now what we're going to do is just kind of mock out where these spikes are going to be. We're not really finishing the shaping for the tail yet, but since we have thinned them out, let's show them off a little bit. So to show them off, I'm going to use our finished fold as an example. So we have a couple options. You can either pull them out to the side like that, or let me grab the other example. You can have them angled, sort of. Well, this one's not super angled, but I give kind of a rotation. You can sort of see, right? They're more pronged facing this way instead of being 45 degree, but you can kind of, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter a whole lot. This is actually a 3-headed dragon. It has the exact same tail. So the steps for it is just to grab one of these points and swivel down. So there's a mountain folding it in half right here. You want to keep that intact. And you just want to swivel down between these layers and then kind of smash it in place wherever you want it to be. So in this case, we'll go about this far. I'm going to have it more pronged facing this way. I kind of like the look of that. And we're going to do the same thing with the other one. And the most important part is just that you kind of have the same angle on both. And as long as they're the same, it doesn't quite matter if you go the 45 degree, if you go less, if you go more. You can even do something creative if you want that you think would look better than even these options. So yeah, it's basically gonna be like this when we shape it out more. Right? So maybe I'll have them a little bit more angled. Maybe not quite that. That way it just kind of looks the same as the one in the thumbnail. But yeah, you can spend time, messing with these to get exactly what you want. It's gonna be something like that. And obviously later down the line, we're gonna do the rest of the shaping like that when it's wet. But for now, that is all we're gonna do for the tail. Kind of have it mocked in place. You can fold it back in half, and let me get these wings out of the way. I don't think I'm going to reclip them because we're actually going to be working on them next. But you can kind of see what we're getting at. We're getting somewhere, Not too bad, not too bad. All right, so let's start on the wings. Let's start on the wing on this side. And if we just take a look, we have this part, which is going to become the majority of our wing. We have claws. Then we have this part right here. And first thing we need to do is to thin our claws. So I'm pretty sure you can guess what the first step is. Yeah, exactly. We're going to be doing the squash fold right here. We're actually going to be doing it on both sides. There's another one right there. So let's get that started. Same kind of squash fold. You'll notice, I guess in my designs, I use these a lot. Not just to thin things out, but for all sorts of stuff. It's on the ridge, so it's nice to handy to use these. There we go. So we thinned it like that. And let's do the other one, which is right here. Same kind of deal. Just like that. And now, do we want to do it on this as well? I can't remember if I did. I might have. That is basically like right here. It doesn't hurt to. Might as well, right? I think we do. So we're gonna do one more on this side too. Just like that. All right, so we had to do 3 squash folds. And now we're going to do 3 reverse fold, or oh, just kidding, just 2 reverse folds. So this is the same as the front claws, these two. So, you know, once again, just pre-crease by folding the angle bisector. And then I like to use just the edge as reference for the second one. And then we'll do our reverse folds. Start with the first one like this. And then the second one. Make sure those corners are pointy. And then we have to do these and reverse them back upwards like this. And reverse fold a little bit down again like so. Same thing right here. All right, and that is our claws, our wing talons, I guess, if you like to say. Now, let me pull out the reference again for our wings. Our wings are kind of interesting. Honestly, they're a little bit, a little bit strange on how I did them, but you can see that the claws will form kind of like an L shape like that, and then there's basically this, which is like the stem or the branch of the wing, which is right there. And ultimately, once these are wet, you don't have to do this yet, but they're going to fold in half and it's going to form a nice like lock in the 90-degree angle. And then this fluff right here from where that L starts, so that grid unit, or even if it's off grid, just wherever that hinges, it's going to do something like that to go all the way around. Except this is going to be bent a little bit too, which is why we did that sort of thing. So it's gonna like pull around and then kind of lock in there. The corner we're gonna be folding in because you see there's no room. But what we need to do is kind of get all these pleats flattened so that we can have room to work with here. And it's a little bit, it's not gonna be perfectly structural. There's gonna be like a little bit of mush, but we have this to help us out. And I think the most mush is just gonna happen around this area to get it kind of flattened out a little bit. But we shouldn't have to worry about that too much. But let's start on doing that. The first thing I'm gonna do is take the squash fold that is on not the claws, it's the one on the wing right here, right? And then we're going to look at this pleat right here, and that's where we're going to start. And I want our references to be at this point and where the arm is going to bend up until the top of the valley fold in this pleat. Or actually just the top of this edge, because what we're going to be doing is making a new valley fold that reaches from basically there to there. So yeah, I guess the top of that crease on the mountain fold. So let me do one. I think I'm explaining it is more confusing than actually doing it. So it's just going to kind of look like this. And it's not going to want to lay flat. Not yet. You can see. So it's a very slight fold. Like that. And it replaces the valley here. For the most part. And we're going to keep doing that along the rest of the mountain folded edges. It's like this. So you can kind of see what we're going for here. Let's get the next one. And the paper is not going to lie flat yet because it kind of gets trapped underneath here. But once we have all these done, we're going to squish it flat. So we just need to, you know, bear with it being kind of weird for now. So we have two more. This one. And here's the last one. And we're not going to do the one on the actual, like, we're not going to do this one. We're just going to do it up to here. And I'm actually going to leave this folded for now. And so now what you want to look for is try to get all of them to fan out from that stem of where the claws are going to hinge from. And it might be really hard. So that's okay for now. And it's not going to lie fully flat yet. Now, right under here, we're basically going to create like a, it's like an illegal stretch, I guess. But I'm going to pinch here, open where this line is, and there's not a full reference, but you can try to use this grid line and use it as a mountain. And as a mountain, use that just to like widen that space by 1. And then flatten some of these down. And it's not really flattening down, but you can see how I'm using my thumb and it's almost creating a like a divot in between all of them. And that's going to help it like hold its shape. as we push it into the wing stem. So it's very free form. It's kind of like that. But now it's kind of like widened and kind of in place. You can see where we're going, right? Cool. And so that was a lot, but now we're kind of just going to decide where these are going to be. And so the first one is going to be between here. And then this is going to be right there. So not the second one, but the third. And why that's important is because we're going to be folding this little tip like edge to edge or corner to corner. So it's like, right now it's a very small triangle that's on top if you think of a line between the two. But we want to shape it so that it's a flat edge. I'm just going to mountain fold that corner behind. And that's also going to help keep the pleat in place. So you see we got this little corner behind. And we're going to do the same thing here now. So it gets wider here and here. It's going to be this point, skip a point into the next one, and make a mountain fold between those two corners. Like that. And then same thing for the last one. Now, don't forget we have this extra pleat folded behind that we're not using. It's going to fold with this. So it's going to be from the corner to there. So we're basically skipping one corner on each pass. And make sure that corner is sharp. Just like that. Cool. Now what's going to happen here is we want to start defining this, because this is like going to be our first kind of curve or bevel. And how we're going to do that is we're going to fold like a valley fold. I don't exactly know where it's going to lead, but I think it's between that point and the top corner here. But it's basically going to lift up the paper that's on this edge a little bit just to try to get that angle. And it's not going to get the full angle yet because we're going to need to fold this whole like claws in half. But should we do that now? Yeah, maybe we'll do that now, actually. So let's do that now. So you can start with that, but let's undo that. We're going to be folding all these layers together in half. So I kind of just use my fingernails towards the center and get it started like that. That way the layers don't spread too much. And then it allows me to pinch down like that. And then the same thing here, which the wing is going to be in the way, but I'm first going to use my fingernails to start the crease, and I'll show it. So I just started it, and that makes it easier to fold in half. And don't worry if the layers are coming apart, because they'll stay once we actually use the wet shaping. All right, so now that it's kind of in half and we kind of have that L in place, we're going to fold from this corner up to here. Release a little bit of the layer like that. And you're just going to kind of let it chill wherever it wants. And actually, let's fold this in half to match the edge. So fold it behind just like that. And with the rest of it, it doesn't really matter where it's going. And that's going to be our start. Now we're going to fold this line in. And it's going to start from this area all the way up to the corner. And what you might notice is the wing is curving. And that's what we want to kind of negate. So we're going to be folding a mountain fold from this corner to that corner. And grabbing along all that weird wonkiness with it. And that'll make the wing look kind of organic. And what I like to do is I just start with a mountain fold. And then once that mountain fold is in place, I use my underhand and kind of fold valleys along the side of it. They're not like full on valleys, but I'm kind of just getting a little bit of a crease started with it. Like that. And then we're going to do the same thing now for the next one. Now this next one is a really long one, and what we're trying to do is use as much of the paper as we can. So in this case, we're going to still try to go from that point all the way to this point. And if we can kind of curve it that way, then that's the ideal goal. So something like this. And we're kind of, sketching this out right now. Once we start the wet shaping, we're going to do a lot more to make this look nicer. So like yours isn't going to look like this yet. No worries at all. Just kind of block it out because it'll make it easier in the end. Right. And now we have one more. And so we're going to try to go from this corner and go down to the end corner here. And actually I like to do the reverse. I like to start from here because it's easier to like aim. You just want to imagine where that mountain fold needs to go. Right? And just pinch along it as best as you can. Get that nice curve if you can. And a lot of times it might undo the other one, so you just fold them back. And that is kind of like the stems of our wing. Very similar to what like a bat kind of wing would look like. And then the last thing we need to do is folding in the curves like this between each corner. And this is pretty easy. All you're going to do is valley fold between these corners. And it's just like a little curve, but since it's between these corners, it's pretty easy to spot. And using the kind of valley from between those mountain folds, it kind of just stays, and you can almost pinch it like a point. So once you do two, it's like right here, right? You can kind of pinch the point like that. And get it along. We got one more right there. Pinch the corner. There you go. And you can make these as deep or as shallow as you want. The deeper you make it, the more curve you might get. So, you know, if you like that kind of aesthetic, you can go for it. You can do a lot of things with that actually. So feel free to just spend some time and make it look however you would like it to look. But that is the gist of the wing. It's a little bit janky. And then once we get to wet folding, it's going to help hide a lot of these creases because we're going to be pressing them all down. It's going to blend in and allow these ones to shine. So that's why it kind of looks like that at the moment, but we've got this. So that was a lot to do. Yes, I am going to tell you to do the same thing on the other side. So go ahead, work on that. Go do that on the other side, spend however long it took, and we'll come back when it's done. And we are done with the other wing. So we got both done now, and we got all the legs done. We are just about done with the dry shaping. There's a couple more things we need to do, but we are really getting there. So let's start with the back spines. We can finally, you know, touch those now that the rest is kind of done and it's kind of spread out enough so we can see what we're actually doing. I'm going to start by taking these 3 flaps and just folding them towards the tail. And as we do that, if I close up the back, right, you can see they're just going to sit nicely between all those layers like that. And let's change the focus. There we go. And essentially what we want is just 3 spikes that will be cascading outwards. So we can start with the top layer. And it's just basically a reverse fold to stand it up. And I'm just going to grab from underneath like this. And let's go ahead, get this as a valley fold. Like that. And basically what we're doing, maybe it'll be easier to show it like this. Make a valley fold right there and a valley fold right there. So we're doing a rabbit ear like this. And when we fold it in half, it's going to stick up on top. So just like that. And now let me grab our example. So in the fold we did here, we have it faced backwards like that. If you want it to face the other way, like you can just change to reverse fold and fold it the other way. But I like it like this, and I'm actually going to probably bend it a little bit more so that it's not like a 90-degree angle. It's more of like a, you know, slightly tilted, and that'll make it a little bit less rigid. So not exactly on the grid, just somewhere between. You can check that quickly by folding it back up. There you go, like that. And that's how we're going to get our spikes. And we're going to essentially do that with the other 2 as well. Except we're going to make them spread out. So not directly next to what we just did. And in this case, let's see, can we just do a reverse fold like this and make it work instead of doing the pleats? Yes, we can. So we can do something like this. And as you can see, I'm not really lining anything up. I'm just kind of eyeballing what I think might look good. I might actually bring this one a little bit closer. It's going to be a taller spike, but we can shape that out later. And same thing with the last one right here. This one's actually going to be smaller, I think. So yeah, in the end, we can adjust these to however we like. It might look kind of awkward with the tall one in the middle like that. So we can just do a variety of things to shorten it. Maybe even just fold in a pleat here. So fold down and then fold the valleys, kind of like what we did before. Just to kind of get them all around the same size, but this is really up to you. You can even make them like super thin and do the sink folds and squash folds that we did for like the claws and stuff. But yeah, I'll leave that up to y'all to decide. But essentially we have our 3 spikes there. And we'll clean that up once we get to more of the wet shaping and we start to solidify more of the model. But that's essentially it for those back spikes. All right. Now, next thing we're going to do is take a look at, let's see. Let's do the legs. So we're going to prep the back legs for wet shaping. And let me give an example. So once again, we're going to be looking at the 3-headed dragon, just because it's quite similar. And just take a look at our leg structure here. So we kind of have 2 different legs. They're not exactly posed the same because you are shaping the dragon in a stance. Now, that requires more experience and just studying how things walk, but you can see the general structure, right? It kind of tilts, bends backwards, and then it bends the other way. And then we have our claws. And that's what we're going to replicate. You can make it steeper as well if you want a more like static positioning. So let me show an example of that. And our example comes from the 1-headed dragon. Now the wings are kind of in the way, but here we go. You can see this one is angled much more aggressively forward, and it gives the effect that it's more sitting back on these legs instead of pushing forward onto those legs. So you can kind of, do whatever you want, but the folding is basically the same, and that's what we're going to dry shape first before we solidify it with the MC. So let's take a look. We're going to take a look at this leg, and remember that it is currently folded like this. And what I want you to think about is drawing 2 parallel lines that are about halfway between the tip and the edge. So like there. And we're going to start a mountain fold. And it's not going to go down all the way. And it's not even going to fold much. It's more just a pinch to define that out. And we're only going to go down, about that far. I'm not exactly sure how far that is, but maybe there's the grid line right there. You can just use up to that grid line. You can do the same thing on the other side. And this side might be a little bit thicker because of all the layers. So just be careful. And again, it's not folding flat. You're just folding kind of the mark where it should be. All right, so like that. Goes to about there. And right after that, we're going to start our first bend, which is going to bend outwards, right? So it's going to bend out like that. And how we're going to do that is you want to imagine now a line that goes diagonal, and it's going to go diagonal. You can either use this corner as like reference. You don't really have to, but it's kind of however much you want to bend it. And I like to do the back first because the front is going to follow up later. Right, so you can see that. And once you have that back crease, you're going to make another one in front of it, but you want to keep the thickness about the same as what we did up here. So again, there's not really any reference, but it's about like there, I'd say. And just kind of get that mountain fold in. Now you'll notice we have a resultant bit right here that kind of sticks out. That's okay. We're actually going to use that as our tension point. And I'm going to mountain fold along that. And you can see it's starting to do a valley. We can actually just complete that crease, and that helps keep it in place. Obviously, it's not going to stay completely in place, but we're going to eventually use that to help us angle it the correct orientation that we want, or the correct angle that we want. So for now, I'm just going to keep it around there and make sure that crease is nice. So right now we have that shape. And now finally we need to bend it back. So again, the options, you can bend it really far forward, or you can do it less forward. Just kind of depends what we want. I'm just going to see what my paper really wants to do and then decide from there. But we're going to use this edge now as a reference. And again, we're trying to keep the same thickness between all these ledges. So I'm going to imagine a line that drops down like that. And then once again, just fold in the mountain. And depending how far forward you want it, you're going to see that we have all of this leftover paper, and it's kind of in the way, and it's a really weird shape. It's not really going to stay put, but that's okay. Get these ones in first because that's important to get strong. And then what we're going to do is, again, we're thinking about the same thickness, so we can see the thickness around here. We're going to imagine that on the inside now. And we're going to fold valley folds to correspond with that thickness. And it's going to be kind of like a reverse fold, but not really, because we're not folding all the way. But it's mostly just to crease where we want it to go. And with that in place, we can imagine how the leg is going to bend, right? And we can also judge if we need to change anything, which I think the top part is a little bit too long. So I'm going to just use my thumb to pull it more sideways. And then I'm going to elongate the bottom end just a little bit more by, you know, just fidgeting with it until it pulls down. Something like this. And again, it's probably not going to stay yet, but it will stay when we wet shape it. And the last thing to do here is we started this fold as a valley, and that was just to set it. Now we're going to flip that around and try to turn it into a mountain without unfolding everything else. And it's not going to fully stay. It's going to do some weird stuff on the inside. It's going to like initiate a swivel inside there. And that's totally fine. That'll just help us to lock in that angle a little bit. Just like that. And we have our leg. Now we need to define where the claws are going to be so that we can kind of plan for how large the foot is. And when we have that, it'll help us ground the feet on our model. I don't know if you can see from this angle, but all the dragons I've made us test, the 4 claws rest nicely on the surface. They're all even. They're all touching. Right. And so that helps with making a good model. If yours don't do that, then it's going to not be as good of a result. And so planning it ahead of time helps a lot with that. Now, these back legs are a little bit strange because of the claw technique we used, 4 claws. So what you want to do is take a look on the inside. And you see in our toes, we have this flap. Actually, this one's already down. We have one that's down. Generally, the one that is closest to you, you can just leave folded down, and that's going to be our back claw. So our back claw, we can check out. This one is going to be this back claw. And what we want to do is find the hinge where that back claw ends and make a valley fold so that now it's kind of like a sticking out like this. And that's where we're going to set our foot. And once it's like this, we're doing a small crimp on the inside to refold this part and fold along the halfway point on our claws like this. And that should allow the back claw to stick out like that and allow that foot structure to kind of be in place. So you can kind of see how, right, that's going. And it might have undid this swivel we got going on. So we're going to put that back too, which the wing blocked it, but putting back that swivel back in there. And it's okay if your claws don't face the right direction yet. They might be sticking up this way. But again, we're going to be shaping that out later. One thing we're going to want to do is kind of spread out the claws. So let's see here. If we take a look at our foot now, we should have 3 claws. 1, 2, and 3. And very simply, within this crimp is how it's going to stay. But you just want to peel them apart from each other ever so slightly. Just so that they're kind of pronged like this. And then twist them to fit within that crimp fold. That way when you imagine it like that, it's going to be facing downwards like this. And one thing I'm noticing after I did these claws is I want this leg to be a little bit longer, the bottom part of the leg. Like if we compare it to this one, it's relatively long, and I think it's a little bit too short on mine. So I'm going to elongate it just by adjusting some of the creases here. I'm going to make this part longer and then shorten the middle bend slightly. And then that's going to shorten the top part a bit. Just like that. And spend a lot longer than maybe I'm spending on this. I'm just kind of showing you the general idea. On my folds, I spent, maybe a good hour getting the correct position on both legs. But we're going to spend more time in the wet shaping. But you really want to make it look nice. Right, you can see if I'm rushing it and just spending a couple minutes, that looks, a lot worse than this. So, but we're going to fix up a lot of this when we wet shape it. No worries. If that, you just need to get the general idea, and then we can move on. All right, so when we move on, next what I want to do is look at this leg and also decide what we're going to do with this flap here. Now, if I grab our other example of a dragon, so let me grab the 3-headed dragon and the other 2-headed dragon. So with the two-headed dragon, it's a very similar thing, but that flap is actually under here, and you can see it just tucks behind the other leg. It doesn't actually do anything, but it kind of provides a barrier for our top wing, which folds over on top of it. Now for our three-headed dragon, our wings are more angled. They stick up a bit more. It's a slightly different structure, but relatively the same. And we don't have that extra spike, or I should say that extra flap. So we didn't have to use it for anything. But since we do have it, we need to decide where our wings are going to go. Do we want our wings more like this one, or do we want them more like this? And that's basically up to you. And, you know, I'm sure you can understand how it works. You know, you just stick one up, stick one down. I think I'm going to stick with the one from the thumbnail just to kind of keep it cohesive. Right, so one of their wings are going to be angled a little bit. And in that case, I don't need to do too much now, but I do want to get these flaps doing something. So what I could do is I could actually just like wrap these around. That might not look very good. The first idea was to use these as spikes, so make really like long spikes along the legs, but I don't think that'll translate well with the wing in the way. So what we can do is kind of just swivel this into another back spike. So you see where our back spikes are? And to make it look like a back spike, we're going to need to fold it that same direction. So I'm going to do like an outside reverse fold. It's not really an outside reverse fold, I don't think. I think I'm just flipping the orientation. Oh, maybe it is like an outside reverse fold, actually. Yeah, we're doing like an outside reverse fold. No real reference. Just make sure the tip is pointy. And then place that anywhere between the rest of the back spikes. Get it to kind of fold into place. Something around there should be good. And might as well do that on the other side while we remember what we did. Outside reverse this. I guess we can use the grid as reference. I don't think we really need to. Get it kind of around the same position. We technically could do these asymmetrically if we wanted, but we'll keep it symmetric just to make things easier. But you can play around with that if you'd like. Feel free to do whatever you'd want. And that will allow this leg to kind of sit nicely in front. Now let's talk about the dry shaping for our front leg a little bit. We don't need to do a whole lot. It's kind of just going to stay put in this position. And once we, shape it out with wet shaping, it's going to be a little bit more sturdy, and we can put in a small little 3D kind of bend like this one. It's a little bit of a bend in there. But for the most part, we just need to get the claws in the correct positions. So again, we need one claw in the back and then 3 out to the side. Now we have this one that's covering. And what's nice is since we can now spread out our claws, after we spread this one out, right, it won't interrupt as much of the rest of the claws. And then we can use this one as our back claw, just like that. And then very similar to how I did it in the back legs right here. Right, I'm just gonna fold up along where that hinge is, where the toes are. And then there's not really anything to make any crimps on, so we can kind of just leave it like that. Later on, when we do some wet shaping, we're going to open it up a little bit just to give it some roundness. And when that happens, it's going to kind of press in somewhere like that. But for now, we don't really need to worry too much. That's our claw. And so that's how you do that one to prep. Now, let's talk about the necks. I'm not going to show it on both sides. You can just start working on that, but we can do that after I showed a neck. So pay attention here. The necks are pretty simple. Let's take a look at our example. You can actually see it's composed of a bunch of pleats that just kind of fold down, right? And it just adds texture to the neck instead of allowing it to be like this. And actually the amount of lines, in my opinion, looks a little bit better than just seeing a bunch of wide flaps like this. So we're just kind of trying to reduce how thick that neck is and how many flaps there are. And this is actually done pretty easily. So what I'm going to do is take the most outside layer, which is this one. And we're just going to fold it down using this edge on the neck as a reference. So it's kind of folded in half. Ideally, you want it to go past just a little bit. And if it doesn't go past, then it's okay. And the transition in here is just, you got to use the hinge to allow it to fold down. And then when you put the leg back, it should kind of do something inside. We don't have to worry too much what it actually does. Now, we're going to do this exact same thing on the next layer, except we're not going to fold down as much. You can pretty much just fold on top of the ledge as reference, and it'll already not match the edge just because of paper thickness. But you just want it to stay consistent. Same thing in here. It's technically, I guess, like a little swivel inside. But now we have two layers like that, right? And you're going to keep going and just try to get as many as you can. You don't want to get all of them because you still want some to stick up on the top. And in my experience with this paper size, I can get about, 5 flaps folded down, 4 or 5. So that's 3 right there. We can probably get about 2 more. So let's do 1. That's 4. And trying to just leave the same gap each time. And 1 more is 5. And I might actually be able to get 6 here. So how I kind of determine is on this 5th one, how high up is it compared to the rest of the layers? And you can see the layers are still pretty high. So I think we can get 1 more and it'll look okay. So then when we fold it, basically the remaining edge kind of looks the same too. And there's still kind of a gap, but this is gonna fold down when we wet shape it. So it's actually a lot closer than it seems. And then we're gonna do that same thing on the other sides. So if we go on the other side of the head, it's the same thing, except the swivel is just gonna take place in between these head spikes. So I'll show this a little bit really quickly, but I think you can generally tell what's going on. And this one might not fold down all the way just because it might get interrupted there. So technically it can. You just have to pull out the layer a little bit. But I don't think all of the layers will be able to do this. So what you can do is just fold it down at a diagonal, and I'll show that on the inside of this example. You can see they kind of just go up into a point and kind of all mush into the back spikes there. It really doesn't matter too much because, people aren't really looking there. We're drawing their attention with the other details, such as the, head, teeth, wings. But get as close as you can. And even if like maybe this first one is so off, I'm actually going to just try to match the first to the second one for as long as I can. And then just use that as our new reference and go from there. So got a third one down. Now keep in mind, this is the inside of the necks. So again, people aren't really going to be looking at the inside of the neck since there's going to be another head blocking the view for the most part. But you know, of course we just want to try to synergize it as much as possible. So here's another, this is 4, I believe. Now we did 6 on the other side, but I don't think we're going to get 6 on this side. It's already looking close with 4, but let's try to get that 5th one in. There you go. And keep in mind that this is gonna close up a little bit like that. There we go. And we're good to go. So go ahead and also do that on the other side as well. And I believe that wraps up our dry shaping. So yeah, I showed one side. We're gonna do the back leg, front leg, claws, neck, dry shaped. And then we're gonna come back on the other side. Let's go ahead and get that done, and I'll see you soon. All right, so we are done on both sides. With the neck, the feet, the back legs, that whole thing. And we only have one more thing to do for dry shaping that I almost forgot, and it is the wing claws. And all we really have to do here is the same thing we did with the feet, is we're just spreading them open like that. And eventually we are going to actually be thinning these. So what I'm going to do is just bisect them all together, just like that. And it's just going to help us for later on when we wet shape them with MC, so that they kind of have a base to go off of from being so thin. Now, the reason we don't fully shape it out now is because if we try to thin it anymore, a lot of times the paper layers are going to spread, and that it just makes it really messy. But you can kind of see that this is all you really need to do just in preparation. Just like that. So same thing on the other side. Just kind of bisect these angles. Again, I'm using the same technique with my thumbnail as I do with like those. Just like this. And spread them apart a little bit. You know, it's a little bit of like a swivel on the inside. Nothing crazy. Just kind of placing them where they need to go. It's kind of like that. All prep for our wet shaping. And there we have it. So that concludes our dry shaping. I'm pretty sure we did everything so far that we needed to do during the dry shaping phase. Obviously, like during wet shaping, you'll see we have a lot more to do, actually. But we'll be doing a mix of getting it wet, letting it dry, folding, doing the same process over again. Sometimes folding while it's still wet or holding it in place and letting it dry. All sorts of things, which you can look forward to in the next part of the tutorial. You know, halfway through this dry shaping phase, I decided it's probably better if these are 2 different videos. That way, at least you can get started on this dry shaping while making the wet shaping tutorial. And just because the wet shaping tutorial is going to take quite a long time and I want to show it properly without rushing. So like, as you can see, this is going to turn into this, and there's, you know, plenty of work to do to be able to turn it into the finished product. So we're going to spend a lot of time, you know, working on this. We're nowhere close yet. You know, it looks like we could be like 70% of the way, but in reality, maybe we're about halfway, just because of how much time you should put into wet shaping. right, well, that concludes this video. So hopefully everything was understood. I recommend you to slow down a lot. So take what I say in this video, apply it to your fold, and just work on it for longer, spend more time, get a nicer curve, get a cleaner curve. You don't have to worry about all the layers, but you know, just make sure everything is pretty nice. Get the correct leg position you want, all that sorts of stuff as you prepare to do wet shaping. And in the meantime, you can also make your batch of MC. This is what mine looks like. It's just a teaser, right? So it's, you know, clear. Mine's actually probably a little bit too watery, but make sure it's the right consistency. Get it thick if you need to. And, you know, that's going to be in the next tutorial, which will come out as soon as I can possibly make it, probably a couple of weeks or so. I hope you're able to see like how much effort goes into thinking of the process and how to teach this and how to even show some of these folds. So if you're following along, definitely, you know, subscribe if you haven't already so you can catch the next video. Leave a comment on where you are in your fold, you know, let me know, as well as drop a like on this video. It just helps me out. In addition, because of this is so high effort, if you stayed till this long, and I'm going to announce in the next video, but the first 10 people to fold this design, I'm going to give out the crease patterns for the one-headed dragon and a three-headed dragon. So if you're one of the first 10 people to fold it and post it and send it to me so that I see it, you will receive the crease patterns for both of these models. Currently, the crease patterns are only available to the YouTube members. Shout out to the OBB members. And it's nowhere else online. And I plan to keep it that way just because, you know, it's a lot of effort making this tutorial. And I think that's a fine incentive for people to actually use the tutorial and fold from it. So if you're interested in either of these two crease patterns as well, go ahead and start working on your two-headed dragon. And it's going to be the first 10 people that post and send me their folds after the third and final part of the tutorial comes out. So stay tuned for that. I'll announce it as well in the third video, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.
All this origami, all this origami, all this origami got me going kamikaze now.